As darkness fell over the city, shadows slithered down dimly lit alleys like menacing claws. A weary but resolute mother hurried through the night, clutching her newborn child close. Her passing stride reaffirmed her sense of urgency while her pulse raced with terror and despair. She implored with passers-by, saying, "Please, I need help," but they looked away, clearly not interested in helping her, even though the stranger was obviously trying to escape from someone chasing after them. No one stopped to help. Looking back, she caught a glimpse of guys in sharp suits, their serious faces getting closer. "They're getting closer," she murmured to herself, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and determination. She hid for a second behind some trash cans and frantically squelched her baby's cries till they turned into gentle sounds, yet the feeling of security was temporary. Their expressions were as icy as the night as they found her hiding spot. "Give us the baby," one of them said without showing any emotional depth. In the face of overwhelming parental protectiveness, her resolve flared like a raging inferno, as she firmly answered, "Over my dead body." She held her son close, her son becoming a physical and emotional barrier between them and the impending threat. "I will protect my son with my life." One of the men became frustrated with her refusal and hit her hard, sending her flying into the dark. As she hoped her son would find refuge in a brutal world, her final thought after the tragedy was a whispered prayer. Afterwards, the light turned off. A kind-hearted old lady was returning home from church in the aftermath, walking slowly and deliberately. The neighborhood held Mrs. Edith in high esteem due to her generosity and dedication to the community. In the middle of this peaceful night, the old lady was startled to hear a tiny, frantic cry from a newborn. She followed the sound into a shadowy alley and found herself in the middle of a tragic situation, as if she had discovered tranquility in everlasting repose. A young woman lay motionless, her countenance peaceful. Next to her, there was a baby, the very same one the mother had been escaping from the men in suits with. Mrs. Edith held the baby in her arms with the gentleness and concern of someone who knows how fragile life is. "Wait a minute, honey, relax, by now you're secure," she murmured reassuringly. Mrs. Edith knew exactly what to do after calling the police, who came to take the young mother's body and examine the cause of her death. She made a choice despite the fact that she knew the police might take the child to any orphanage in town, regardless of how nice it was. She brought the infant back to her house. While the infant was in her house, the elderly woman fed him, soothed him, and made sure he slept soundly, all with the gentle touch of a grandmother. Overwhelmed by an unanticipated sense of duty, she brought the infant to a respectable institution where she had spent her formative years. The following morning, she wished it would provide him the love and safety he needed. The staff was surprised and grateful to see Mrs. Edith and the infant when they arrived. "He'll need a name," they said, and without hesitation, Mrs. Edith gave him the name Matthew. She felt an overwhelming wave of relief knowing that Matthew would be safe as she watched the registration procedures, but she still found it very hard to part with him. The staff thoughtfully offered, "Would you like to stay a while and help give him his first bath?" After observing Mrs. Edith's emotional state, she had never had children of her own, so these fleeting moments of mother intimacy filled a hole she was unaware existed. Her ecstasy was overwhelming, her hands shaking with affection. She accepted their offer with great pleasure. Mrs. Edith couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to hold her own child when she carefully undressed Matthew. But what happened next was unimaginable to anyone. There was a startled stillness in the room as Matthew undressed. They all gasped at the same time, disbelief visible on their features. "Oh my God, what is this?" said words hardly came out of their mouths as they saw weird markings painstakingly painted in black on the infant's torso. The enigma Matthew carried on his skin perplexed Mrs. Edith and the staff alike, as the precision defied rationality. The baby's first bath at the orphanage became a memorable occasion. Who could do this to such a small child? They questioned with a tinge of curiosity mixed with incredulity. These were not your typical tattoos. They appeared to have ancient meaning and were created for a reason that was both fascinating and unsettling to see on a newborn's tender skin. The elderly woman, with a pallid face, was unable to look away. "How did I miss this?" More shook than she would have liked to admit, she whispered to herself, "I put him to bed last night." I didn't consider giving him a bath or taking off his clothing, oh, Lord." As everyone in the room attempted to make sense of the unexplainable, speculation shook the place. Could the mother have been involved in something? One cautiously proposed, asking their peers for clarification. Still, Mrs. Edith vehemently supported the young woman who had died. She firmly remarked, "That poor soul didn't seem to be mixed up in anything like this." Remembering the mother's last-ditch attempt to shield her, Mrs. Edith said, her voice trailing off into concern, "There's something more here, something beyond our understanding." Everyone who worked at the orphanage became enthralled with the mystery surrounding the symbols as it spread like wildfire. They walked up to the infant one by one, attempting to interpret the incomprehensible etchings on its skin. At that moment, there was a general sense of curiosity and apprehension throughout the orphanage as everyone looked for answers to the unknown. Ignoring the chaos all around him, the baby waited silently for his bath, his nudity embellished with mysterious symbols that were beyond comprehension. A young security guard named Gabriel stood out among the staff members who were speculating about Matthew's unusual marks. Gabriel had a deep interest in esoteric symbolism and ancient cultures. He proceeded to the nursery and studied the infant, his attention focused on a single symbol, a complex spiral entwined with an object that looked like an eye. He mumbled, his voice cracking with recollection, "I've seen that before. What is it? Oh my God, what does that signify?" The inquiry rang through the room, even to Mrs. Edith, who had remained at the child's side the entire time, intrigued but wary of the consequences. Using his phone, Gabriel took pictures of the symbols while researching them on obscure websites and old myths. What he found not only scared him, but added a sense of urgency and dread to the puzzle. Gabriel started delivering his results with the assembled personnel in a grave manner, expressing his fear that they would not like the matter. Human sacrifice was a means of power and redemption for the ancient cult linked to these symbols. They held in high esteem a god who could bring about both rebirth and annihilation. The tone of Gabriel's voice became more ominous when he went on. The sacred writings state that the cult would choose a virgin to carry a child bearing these marks. They thought this infant would be used in a ceremony to call upon their god. As soon as the baby was born, they intended to seize him or her and carry out a terrible rite that would decide the world's destiny and establish the cult's evil power, giving them absolute control over the planet. The scientist took a moment to gather his thoughts as the seriousness of the issue hit him. Thanks to Gabriel's research, the hideous practices of this long-lost religion were revealed. We have to be on guard in case their false beliefs come back and harm us all. The elderly woman's logic led her to the conclusion that the young mother had probably hurriedly sought shelter that night in an attempt to spare her kid from an awful end. And alas, that is precisely what transpired. Everything became crystal evident when I looked into the young mother's fearless and determined eyes. Despite knowing the cult was a threat to her and her unborn child, she committed her last deed out of an act of immense love in an effort to free Matthew from a dreadful curse. Everyone working at the orphanage, including the security guard and the elderly woman, felt tremendous pressure after the news broke. It was more than just taking care of an abandoned infant. It was protecting a life that had inadvertently become the center of a battle between righteousness and wickedness. After murdering the mother, why didn't the suit-clad guys remove the infant from the house? Surprisingly, after attacking the girl, a police cruiser drove by, scaring them away. The mother and infant were left in the alley as they ran away. Nevertheless, when they went back to get the kid, Mrs. Edith had already retrieved him. In their confusion over the boy's whereabouts, they vented their anger. Worse yet, two well-dressed guys in suits suddenly made a scene, greatly increasing the already high anxiety levels at the orphanage. They presented themselves in a roundabout way, saying nothing more than that they were on the hunt for a newborn boy whose mother had been frantically trying to find him. A baby boy with blonde hair whose mother was in the hospital and had been separated from him. "Did you receive any children here yesterday or today?" Mrs. Edith, who observed them with a furrowed brow, did not get into their explanation, even if it would have been compelling to an unwary listener. An uneasy feeling of mistrust shot through her. "I apologize, but we haven't received any new arrivals that fit the description you gave," she said with conviction, her voice strong enough to surprise even herself. With anger and distrust visible in their eyes, the guys exchanged looks. Throughout the night and into the morning, they had combed the city's orphanages, hoping to find the young child. "Please tell me, ma'am." They kept trying to get in, asking, "Can we just check?" The security guy, Gabriel, who had been keeping an eye on them from a distance, came over to them. "Excuse me, but I do not permit you to enter. Scaring the kids could be a problem. You were already informed by the woman that we did not receive any infants. Could you please go? I'm going to have to beg you to." Something unsettling crossed his path at that very second. The men's wrists bore the identical emblem of their religion as the one on Matthew's skin. Albeit it was partly hidden by their watches and suits, at Gabriel's urging, the visibly enraged guys quickly departed. He informed Mrs. Edith and the orphanage administration of his finding after they had left. There was a unanimous decision. The police had to be notified. An old cult, enigmatic pursuers, a newborn imprinted with strange symbols. It all seemed like a scene from a thriller, but the seriousness of the situation was palpable. At first, the cops were dubious, but they decided to investigate nonetheless. The first search soon turned into a full-scale effort. Detectives found the cult's widespread influence after dissecting a complex network of deceit and manipulation that was centered on the group, which had carried out horrific crimes over the years. Members earned prominent positions in institutions, the police department, and very successful businesses. They had taken the newborns for sinister rituals after tricking a number of single moms into believing their children would have a better future. The culmination of the operation was a slew of arrests. The leaders of the cult and the closest adherents were captured after a massive police operation that took place throughout several states. The deconstruction of the cult was widely covered by the media, which also described how law enforcement had tracked down and apprehended those in charge of the network of terror and manipulation. Once providing a haven for destitute youngsters, the orphanage turned become the focal point of an unexpected tale. A glimmer of light could be seen amid the mayhem. Matthew, who had been unwittingly thrown into a conflict between good and evil, slept soundly in his cradle. Matthew was safer than ever before because to the perseverance of individuals like the security officer, the elderly woman, and the police, the threat that had previously threatened him had vanished, and the orphanage as a whole exhaled with relief that the cult's threat had been eliminated. The cult members' arrests signaled the end of a terrible period and demonstrated the strength of group action for a cause that is right. A sense of tranquility returned to the city as the commotion around the cult's discovery and disintegration subsided. Mrs. Edith made a choice that would change her life. Her heart had welcomed the baby from the moment she saw him. She formally adopted Matthew out of an unwavering affection for the young child and a strong wish to protect him from any relics of his troubled background. Their journey has only begun with their adoption. Mrs. Edith took the brave decision to start over far away from any threats or relics that might have survived the cult's demise in order to protect Matthew from any potential threats that might still be hiding in the shadows. She sold her house, said goodbye to friends and neighbors, and traveled with her infant to a peaceful tiny town in a different region of the nation with unflinching resolve, with the serenity and stability Mrs. Edith was looking for. The new town welcomed them with open arms. She and Matthew started a new life together there. Despite its modesty, their new home was full of laughter and love. Matthew developed into a happy, curious, and caring youngster under Mrs. Edith's loving care. Qualities that bloomed under the affection and security she offered. The drawings that were simply painted on and readily removed from Matthew's skin disappeared after every bath. Mrs. Edith never discussed the circumstances surrounding Matthew's adoption. As he grew older, she realized some things were too important to share, and she felt that his innocence should be preserved. Rather than stoking the boy's worries, she chose to brighten his life with stories of romanticism, bravery, and magic. For his part, Matthew never asked questions about his background. To him, Edith was just his mother. She was the one who taught him how to ride a bicycle, who lovingly bandaged and kissed his scratched knees, and who drove monsters out from under his bed. Their love proved that their chosen bonds may be just as strong as those derived from blood. Life for Matthew and Edith seemed to settle into a comfortable rhythm as the years went by. As though they had finally discovered their niche, they were a close-knit family who had overcome their fears and looked forward to a bright future. A grateful and loving Mrs. Edith saw her son Matthew flourish as he grew up, free from the clutches of the cult. Being a mother had been her lifelong goal, and they had found happiness as a couple. the day the old woman died away at the age of 89, leaving her 29-year-old son to care for himself, cast a pall over their joy. But Matthew understood that their unbreakable link as son and mother would remain intact so long as they were united in spirit. After watching the first story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Now, let's watch another similar story. As her 5-month-old son persisted in wailing uncontrollably, a mother reached her breaking point. She undressed him and examined him carefully in her quest to find out what was wrong. She found something totally out of the ordinary, which shocked and worried her to no end. Angel, a professional and single mother of 31, sought refuge in the sanctuary that greeted her after a trying day on the job. There was constant pressure on her to achieve ever higher goals as the CEO of a tiny but rapidly expanding business and a dedicated mother. She longed to go home and be with her beloved child as much as she could in that stifling environment. She was able to briefly escape the stresses of the day when she entered her home and was met with a welcoming refuge in her son's laughter. Before leaving, Miranda, who was dependable and caring for Angel's 5-month-old boy, was prepared to inform her about what had happened that day. "Miss Angel, good evening. Today, Liam was full of energy thanks to a good night's sleep and an enjoyable play session. He's sound sleeping in his cot once again," as the elderly caretaker adjusted her satchel. She exclaimed, "What a charming lad." "Miranda, I am much obliged." When Angel escorted her to the door, he tenderly said, "I am not sure how I would manage without you. Until tomorrow, good night, Miranda," Angel said as she said goodbye, her face beaming with a kind smile as Miranda walked away. After dropping Liam off at his crib, Angel went right to him to look at him lovingly. With a murmur, she said, "Oh, my baby, Mommy missed you so much." As she cradled him in her arms, she breathed in his beautiful, innocent aroma. Even while he slept, little Liam felt his mother's touch and grinned. Subsequently, she reset the baby monitor to keep an eye on him remotely and carefully returned him to his crib. Before beginning her nightly beauty ritual, Angel soaked in a warm bath. She made a simple supper and changed into her pajamas. Her thoughts drifted to the difficulties of being a single mother and the burden of her duties when she took a seat to eat. Her husband's untimely death after a valiant fight with cancer forced her down this road, one she had no choice but to go. Now that she was completely responsible for everything, Angel was determined to make sure her business was successful and take care of her family and Liam without fail. When Angel balanced her responsibilities as CEO and mother, she knew her baby was in good hands with Miss Miranda, the caretaker, who was there for him constantly. Angel deliberately diverted her attention from melancholy thoughts, reminding herself that this was real life. Even though the weight of her responsibilities was about to overwhelm her, she had to face the obstacles head-on and maintain her strength for her child. No matter how difficult, Angel made the decision to take a nap and relax after supper. She sensed the silence of the night and the softness of the covers when she slipped into bed. Angel closed her eyes and fell quickly into a sound sleep. She dreamed that she was in a peaceful, dreamy place with soft pillows and shades of pearly white. Liam was playing joyously around her and her husband, and the weather was ideal, with a little wind brushing her face as they talked and laughed. The air was heavy with pleasure and joy, only to be broken by Liam's piercing shriek. Angel was startled out of her fantasy and faced with the hard reality of her son screaming when she heard his panicked wails. She leaped from her bed and raced to Liam, reassuring him gently. "Love, what's wrong? Mom is present." Holding him close, she reassured him. "Don't cry, babe." Angel had a great sense of relief as he began to cry less and less and felt his mother's presence. She calmed him down, then carefully put Liam back in his crib before going back to her bed. As she leaned against her pillow, she experienced a range of emotions. Liam began crying again about an hour later, so Angel tried nursing him while she tried to figure out what was happening. However, he declined. No matter how hard Liam's mother tried to comfort him, he would not stop weeping. She checked his diapers, his fever, and everything else that occurred to her. It took the tired mother over 2 long hours to finally settle her infant. Angel was exhausted, but she also felt a sense of comfort when she watched him drift off to sleep. She wrapped her arms around Liam and dozed off, but the quiet was short-lived since the infant began to cry once more. The mother, in a desperate attempt to get her son back to sleep, tried for the whole night, growing more and more weary, ever since Miranda, his caretaker, departed. Liam had been crying uncontrollably and curiously often every night. This pattern had become a regular event. The noise of the child's sobs kept upsetting the quiet of the evening, even though Miranda had made sure he was fed, changed, and ready for bed before she left. For Angel, there was going to be an even bigger difficulty starting that one night. Even Liam, who was usually very composed, was crying in a strange way. His behavior struck Angel as incredibly strange, and she made every effort to reassure him, but to no avail. In an attempt to calm him, she tried swinging him, making goofy faces, and lulling him to sleep. "What's the matter, babe?" she inquired. There was an obvious sense of worry in Angel as she sensed something was off with her baby boy. She was so desperate that she picked up the phone to question Miranda again about Liam's actions. "Well, hi there, Miranda. I apologize for calling you at this late hour, but Liam doesn't seem well. He's been sobbing for hours, and nothing has helped to quiet him. Oh my gosh. Earlier today he was all right. He only shed a few tears that afternoon. However, his behavior was not serious. I sang him to sleep, and then he went asleep," Miss Miranda remarked, her tone simultaneously worried and surprised. "Okay, I'm grateful, my love. I'm sorry for the delayed call. Good night." In response, Angel, thinking that he might accept, Angel contemplated offering him a bottle. But her efforts were in vain. It seemed that after weeping non-stop for hours, he had a temperature. She wondered if a bath might help him unwind. She worried and doubted herself when she filled the baby bathtub with warm water and undressed him, preparing to bathe him. She cried out, "My God, I hope this helps," overwhelmed by the weight of duty and bewilderment. In this difficult time, Angel wished her spouse were there to help her. While a first-time mother, she wished she had someone to lean on for advice and comfort while she raised her son. The baby bathtub was brought out to soothe Liam, but his cries persisted. As Angel tried to figure out what was wrong, she could hear his piercing cries. When she felt helpless and overloaded, she bit her lip. "Is something wrong with you, my son? Perhaps we ought to consult a medical professional," she uttered with an air of urgency. As her sadness deepened, she could not help but glance down at Liam's thigh and see the swelling. "What on earth is that?" she cried out in disbelief. Asking how on earth she had missed it, she hastily covered Liam in a towel and dashed to her bed, her anxiety level rising. As Angel's fear intensified, his cries morphed into quiet, agonizing whimpers. She felt a chill run down her spine as she unwrapped the towel and examined her son's sensitive skin on his leg. Where she spotted the strange protrusion, she felt uneasy when she leaned down to examine the substance, which seemed like a small sphere. The quick beat of her heart resounded in her ears like the sound of a war drum. While checking the bulge with a little touch, Liam let out a piercing scream of agony that tore into the nervous spirit of his worried mother. Angel leaped out of bed and dressed her son with great care. Putting on her coat and driving apprehensively but cautiously to the hospital, she secured her home. She was consumed by thoughts of Liam's dire position, felt guilty for failing to notice sooner, and battled to comprehend what was wrong. When she concentrated entirely on rushing Liam to the hospital, the burden of guilt weighed heavily on her thoughts. Holding Liam close as he wailed in pain, she hurried to the reception area. As soon as she arrived at the emergency department, a nurse was on her way to the doctor's office. As soon as the receptionist summoned emergency services, the infant was safely transported there. Even while the doctor examined Liam and attempted to soothe the crying baby, the mother watched intently, her irritation plainly visible. Doctor commented, "That's a significant tick, madam," indicating the black protrusion. "But how could that be?" The revelation astounded Angel, who inquired. The physician elaborated, saying, "Your boy must have come into contact with someone or something carrying the tick." Both Angel and her concerns were muddled, unfortunately. "We do not have any dogs and my infant does not go outside. Is the nanny a possibility? It couldn't be accidental," the doctor adamantly maintained. It had to be contact. Contemplating another late-night phone call to Miss Miranda to inquire as to whether or not she or anyone else had exposed Liam to ticks or other animals, Angel felt a whirlwind of emotions. Feeling the burden of responsibility and the upcoming responsibilities that awaited her in the morning, she was irritated and furious. She fought the nagging guilt that was making her want to phone the old lady at 2 in the morning. "You lost John because you didn't notice his illness until it was too late with cancer," a mocking voice in her brain said. "You're ignoring your son now." Angel inhaled deeply and battled her deepest demons. "Angel, you're a bad mother," said a different voice. Just then, a doctor intervened to stop her from thinking in circles. "Madam, everything will work out. It is merely a tic. We'll look after him well." Angel inhaled deeply and let it out. "All okay, Angel, no worries, you're only a human." She tried to quiet her racing thoughts and feelings by whispering to herself, "You can't control every situation." The exhausted mother went to the treatment center with the medical personnel, where her child was given the attention he needed. They removed the tic gently and made sure the youngster was not in any pain by being very attentive and determined. After they were done, Angel was grateful but also heartbroken. Now that her baby appeared more at ease, she moved closer to him so he could feel her presence. Her words, "You're doing great, baby boy," were murmured into his ear. After observing her suffering and removing the tic, the doctor kindly told her that everything was fine. "Your son will get better shortly, simply exercise greater caution." After the surgery, Liam's cries turned into steady breaths. He became quieter. He eventually fell asleep. Seeing her tiny man soundly asleep gave Angel a wave of relief. She received the required prescription from the doctor along with guidelines to follow. He gave advice on how to keep ticks at home, stressing the need for routine inspections and keeping the area tidy to ward off these parasites. Angel listened intently to the doctor's words and expressed her deep gratitude to him and the team for their support and care. Once she had finished the administrative processes at the hospital, she took her kid home and stayed with him till dawn. When Miss Miranda showed up for work at her regular time, Angel welcomed her with a glum look. Miranda didn't see Angel's weary face at first as she came in the front door. She murmured, "Good morning, dear," with a smile on her face. But her tone softened when she saw Angel's expression. "Honey, what took place? You appear worn out. It's been a lengthy evening." Liam was incredibly ill. The physicians discovered a tic on his thigh. Angel retorted in a cold, impersonal manner. "Oh my God, is he all right?" Miranda spoke, her voice shaking with worry. "My poor little boy. Miss Miranda, have you let anyone into our house or exposed Liam to any pets?" with a hint of uncertainty and annoyance in her voice. Angel questioned. Angel went on, looking both annoyed and perplexed. "The doctors said ticks only come from direct contact," she added. When Miranda turned to face Angel, her gaze darkened into fear. She hesitated for a bit before stuttering, "Miss Angel, to tell the truth, I've been taking care of the neighbor's cat. I didn't believe Liam's health would be in danger. You are aware of my affection for him." Seeing the gravity of the situation, she covered her lips with both hands. "Miranda, how were you able to do that? You are aware of how valuable Liam is to me," Angel replied, her voice now brimming with resentment and sadness. With tears in her eyes, Miranda said, "I'm very sorry, Angel. Taking care of the cat sounded innocuous, and I needed the extra cash. I had no idea that a well-groomed house cat might introduce ticks into your house." The room fell silent as Angel took in Miranda's explanation. "I no longer want any pets in our house, Miranda," Angel declared with conviction. "I can't stand the idea of my child getting sick or worsening as a result of my carelessness. Please, be more careful. I know you were unaware of the risk." Angel acknowledged and greatly valued Miranda's unwavering love and commitment to her kid, even though her anxiety was growing. "I am also increasing your salary so you can focus more on caring for baby Liam," said the woman. As she fought to articulate her deepest thanks, Miranda's eyes filled with tears. She expressed her profound gratitude to Angel, her remarks infused with a mix of relief and genuine admiration. Not only did this catastrophe change everything, but it also deepened Miranda and the family's love and dedication to one another. Following the distressing event with the tic, Angel's regular activities progressively resumed as before, although with increased caution and security. After every possible danger to tiny Liam was investigated and eliminated, the once unpredictable home became a safe sanctuary of comfort and love. with Liam's medication and daily routine under her watchful eye. Miranda kept her word and was extra careful. After what seemed like an eternity, Liam was back to his usual mischievous self. Seeing her son's contagious laughter and bright smiles brought an overwhelming sense of delight to Angel. "Come to Mama, my baby," she called with a kind gesture. She committed to spending more quality time with her little one and shouted, "It's playtime," in a voice filled with excitement. She frequently came up with new ways to enjoy life with Liam, all in an attempt to encourage creativity. Walking leisurely in the park was a joy they shared, as was appreciating nature's beauty and the little things in life. Angel was constantly by Liam's side when he blossomed and marveled at the world around, savoring each milestone, laugh, and adventure. Her love for him was limitless, and she was determined to provide him with the greatest life she could. The terrifying tick episode was now only a distant memory, but the teachings of love and mindfulness it imparted had taken root and were shaping their lives with optimism and determination. After watching the stories above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comment section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.